In recent political discourse, the legacy of Bernie Sanders has resurfaced as a point of contention and reflection among commentators and party members alike. A recent opinion piece from USA Today posits that Sanders could have been a more effective leader than both Donald Trump and Joe Biden, especially in the wake of ongoing challenges facing the Democratic Party. The author Sara Pequeño argues that Sanders' policy positions, particularly regarding healthcare and wealth inequality, are more attuned to the needs of the American electorate. During a press conference on May 12, Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. inadvertently highlighted Sanders' influence by referencing his advocacy for lowering prescription drug prices, a core issue during Sanders' presidential campaigns. Kennedy acknowledged that the recent executive order from Trump aimed at reducing drug costs echoed Sanders' long-standing proposals. However, Sanders quickly countered, asserting that such executive actions would likely be challenged in court. He emphasized the need for legislative solutions that would ensure Americans pay no more for prescription drugs than their counterparts in other developed nations. If Trump is serious about making real change rather than just issuing a press release, he will support legislation I will soon be introducing, Sanders stated. Pequeño reflects on how the political landscape might have changed had Sanders been the Democratic nominee in 2016 instead of Hillary Clinton. She notes that Sanders has consistently resonated with younger voters, leading to significant support among the 18 to 29 age group during the 2020 Democratic primaries. This demographic loyalty suggests that Sanders could have galvanized a more robust base for the party, especially as dissatisfaction with the current political climate grows. Despite the partisan divide, both Republicans and Democrats could learn from Sanders' approach to issues such as affordable housing and tax reform. His critiques of the influence of wealth on politics resonate amidst a growing sentiment of distrust towards established party structures. You have billionaires in both political parties determining what legislation gets to the floor and who is the candidate, Sanders remarked, encapsulating a frustration that many voters share. The article points out that Sanders possesses qualities that both Trump and Biden lack, including high approval ratings among Democrats and a knack for energizing crowds. While both Trump and Sanders appeal to working-class Americans through promises of economic relief, Sanders delineates himself with concrete plans for policy implementation. It would be best for Trump to pursue this initiative through legislative action and bipartisan support, Pequeño writes, underscoring the need for cooperation across party lines. As the Democratic Party grapples with internal conflicts and declining poll numbers, Sanders remains a figure of stability and potential. His recent Fighting Oligarchy tour, which has attracted diverse crowds including Republicans and independents, showcases his ability to bridge divides. Pequeño suggests that rather than sidelining Sanders, party leaders should consider integrating his ideas into their platforms to rejuvenate the Democratic brand. In a broader context, the current political landscape reveals an urgent need for change within the Democratic Party. With figures like Sanders advocating for a departure from traditional party labels, there is a growing discourse around the necessity of adapting to the evolving political climate. The sentiment echoed by Pittsburgh Mayor Ed Gainey, who emphasizes the importance of a multiracial, multi-generational coalition, aligns with Sanders' vision for a more inclusive and equitable political framework. As the midterm elections approach, the Democratic Party must confront its identity and strategy. Embracing the principles championed by Sanders could serve as a roadmap for revitalization. The question remains, will the party heed this call for change, or will it continue down a path that risks alienating its core constituents? As Pequeño concludes, the future of the Democratic Party may depend on its willingness to recognize the lessons from Sanders' campaigns and the shifting demands of the electorate. As the political landscape in Wisconsin continues to evolve, the recent Republican Party of Wisconsin State Convention in Rothschild served as a microcosm of the challenges and divisions facing the party. Despite the gathering being a platform for Republicans to unify around their shared goals, it quickly became clear that rifts within the party are deepening, particularly between the mainstream and grassroots factions. Tensions flared shortly after the convention commenced. with a heated debate surrounding the seating of Kelly Rue, the state GOP treasurer. Rue, a staunch ally of former President Donald Trump and a key figure in Wisconsin's controversial 2020 election saga, found herself at the center of a contentious discussion. Supporters argued that her exclusion was politically motivated, while detractors pointed to her recent electoral loss as a reason for concern. Ultimately, Rue was allowed to take her seat, and the cheers of grassroots echoed through the convention hall, underscoring the growing influence of the party's base. As the day progressed, U.S. Senator Ron Johnson addressed the gathering, candidly acknowledging the disunity plaguing the party. "In the 15 years since I entered this political process, I've never seen as many squabbles," he remarked, emphasizing the need for cohesion as Republicans prepare for upcoming elections. The call for unity resonated throughout speeches, with a clear emphasis on rallying behind Trump's agenda, particularly regarding economic, immigration, and social issues. While Republican leaders touted victories from the November elections, including Trump's win and the party's control of the U.S. Senate, the shadow of recent electoral failures loomed large. Notably, the party faced a significant setback in the April Supreme Court election, where the conservative candidate lost by a considerable margin despite substantial financial backing. The defeat has led to finger-pointing within the party, with some calling for the removal of Wisconsin GOP Chair Brian Schimming. In response, Schimming maintained that the party must learn from its losses and remain united moving forward. Trump's influence was palpable at the convention, even in his absence, as many attendees showcased merchandise and apparel celebrating his legacy. U.S. Representative Glenn Grothman opened his remarks with praise for Trump, while others, such as U.S. Representative Tom Tiffany, hinted at the importance of next year's elections for Republicans' statewide viability. Tiffany argued that the upcoming contests would serve as a test for the party's ability to connect with voters on a broader scale. However, the convention also highlighted the peril of internal discord. U.S. Representative Derek Van Orden warned that continued infighting could jeopardize future electoral success, pointing to the Supreme Court loss as a direct consequence of party members not rallying together. He urged Republicans to support Trump's proposed immigration and tax reforms to avoid further electoral disappointments. The convention also featured a keynote address by U.S. Representative Nancy Mace, who focused on social issues and Trump's stance on gender and immigration. Mace's speech received enthusiastic applause, reflecting the party's commitment to conservative values, particularly in light of perceived threats from Democratic policies. As the convention wrapped up, the call for unity echoed among the party's leadership and attendees alike. Despite the underlying fractures, there remains a shared recognition that the Republican Party in Wisconsin must consolidate its efforts to remain competitive in the electoral landscape. The upcoming elections will serve as a critical test of the party's ability to align its factions and present a united front to voters. Looking ahead, the Wisconsin Republican Party faces a pivotal moment. The need for cohesion and a clear vision will be paramount as they navigate the complexities of state and national politics. If they can bridge the divides within their ranks and effectively communicate their agenda to a broader electorate, they may well capitalize on the fervor surrounding Trump's influence. However, failure to address internal conflicts could hinder their chances in the crucial elections ahead. In a significant escalation of legislative tensions, U.S. Senator Sheldon Whitehouse, Democrat, Rhode Island, has raised alarms over the Republican Party's apparent plans to overrule the Senate parliamentarian and eliminate the filibuster, a move critics warn could undermine decades of Senate procedural norms. This call to action comes as Republicans prepare to challenge California's clean air waivers, which allow the state to enforce stricter pollution standards for vehicles. The Government Accountability Office (GAO) has previously asserted that these waivers do not constitute rules under the Congressional Review Act (CRA), necessitating a 60-vote threshold for any resolutions to pass in the Senate. The parliamentarians' ruling reinforces this requirement, yet Republicans are reportedly considering a nuclear option to bypass it, potentially as soon as next week. In a passionate address, Whitehouse stated, "Republicans are delusional if they think overruling the parliamentarian on a legislative matter is anything but going nuclear. He warned that such a move would not only break the Senate but also set a dangerous precedent that could reverberate through future legislative actions. This sentiment was echoed by Senators Alex Padilla, Democrat California, and Adam Schiff, Democrat California, who joined White House in highlighting the broader implications of this potential shift. If you give a mouse a cookie, it never ends, White House cautioned, suggesting that once the precedent is set, other legislators may seek to leverage it for their own agendas, further eroding the Senate's traditional role as a deliberative body. The urgency of this situation is underscored by the fact that California's Clean Air Act waivers have long been seen as a critical tool in combating climate change and promoting public health. The Republican leadership, however, appears unified in its determination to oppose these waivers, even as it contradicts earlier positions on the importance of adhering to Senate procedural norms. In a recent statement, Majority Leader John Thune, Republican, South Dakota, expressed his initial reluctance to override the parliamentarian, calling it totally akin to killing the filibuster, a cautionary stance that seems to have shifted amidst current pressures. Meanwhile, the Senate has also passed a bipartisan resolution designating May as Motorcycle Safety Awareness Month, introduced by Senators Gary Peters, Democrat, Michigan, and Joni Ernst, Republican, Iowa. This initiative aims to promote safe riding practices as the weather warms and more motorcyclists take to the roads. The resolution is backed by organizations such as the Motorcycle Safety Foundation, which highlights the alarming statistic that motorcyclist fatalities reached their highest level on record in 2023, accounting for 15% of all traffic deaths. May is a time when many riders are returning to the roads after the winter season, said Peters, emphasizing the need for heightened awareness and safety education. In a separate but equally pressing matter, House Majority Leader Steve Scalise, Republican, Louisiana, has been vocal about the Republican Party's unified stance on advancing a reconciliation bill aimed at addressing various policy areas, including tax reform and social safety nets. Scalise outlined the bill's objectives to prevent tax increases, secure borders, and bolster American energy production, all while navigating the complexities of party dynamics. Every step of the way you go back and look at the two-step reconciliation process, the budget, then this reconciliation bill, Scalise noted, reflecting on the tight vote margins that characterize current legislative efforts. As the political landscape becomes increasingly polarized, the ramifications of potential changes to Senate rules and procedures loom large. The decisions made in the coming weeks will not only shape the immediate legislative agenda but also influence the long-term functioning of the Senate as a deliberative body. The stakes are high, with the potential for significant changes to environmental policy, public health initiatives, and fiscal responsibility hanging in the balance. As these developments unfold, all eyes will remain on the Senate, where the interplay of power, policy, and principle could redefine the contours of American governance for years to come. In a significant development on Capitol Hill, President Donald Trump's ambitious tax and spending bill has passed a critical hurdle, edging closer to a potential vote in the House of Representatives. The legislation, officially titled the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, was approved by the House Budget Committee with a narrow 17-16 vote, despite lingering dissent from several Republican lawmakers. This marks a pivotal moment for the administration as it seeks to implement sweeping changes to the nation's tax structure and government spending. The bill, sprawling over 1,116 pages, aims to deliver around $4.9 trillion in tax breaks. However, it has faced pushback from a faction of Republicans who argue that the proposed spending cuts fall short of what is necessary to curb the national debt, which currently stands at an alarming $36 trillion. The bill does not yet meet the moment, noted Texas Republican Chip Roy, one of the dissenters, emphasizing the need for deeper cuts to prevent further fiscal burdens on future generations. Among the most contentious points of discussion are proposed cuts to Medicaid, a program that provides healthcare to low-income Americans. The bill suggests implementing stricter work requirements for Medicaid recipients, which has raised concerns among some Republicans. Roy and his colleagues advocate for these requirements to take effect immediately rather than waiting until after Trump's tenure. This proposal has drawn criticism from others within the party, including Missouri Senator Josh Hawley, who argued that such cuts would be both morally wrong and politically suicidal. The legislation also proposes a significant increase in the local tax deduction known as SALT, which would triple the cap from $10,000 to $30,000 for couples. However, many lawmakers from high-tax states contend that this adjustment is inadequate, calling instead for a cap of $62,000 for individual filers. House Republican leaders are reportedly negotiating to find a middle ground with suggestions of increasing the cap to $40,000 for individuals and $80,000 for joint filers. Another critical aspect of the bill is its proposed reforms to the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program (SNAP), which currently assists over 42 million Americans in purchasing food. Proposed changes would require states to assume a share of the program's costs and expand work requirements for recipients, which has sparked outrage among Democratic leaders who see it as an attack on vulnerable populations. As the political landscape continues to evolve, Republican lawmakers face the challenge of uniting their party around this ambitious legislative agenda while addressing internal divisions. The upcoming negotiations in the Senate will be crucial, as many anticipate further modifications to the bill as it moves through the legislative process. In parallel political developments, State Senator Lynn Evans from Iowa has launched an exploratory committee to consider a run for the U.S. House of Representatives following Congressman Randy Feenstra's announcement of his gubernatorial candidacy for 2026. Evans, who serves as chairman of the Iowa Senate Education Committee, articulated a desire to bring true conservative representation to Washington, reflecting a growing trend of local politicians seeking higher office amid shifts in congressional dynamics. With the backdrop of potential changes in the U.S. House and the contentious nature of Trump's tax bill, the coming months promise to be pivotal for both the Republican Party and the broader political landscape as they navigate the complexities of fiscal policy and representation. As lawmakers deliberate and negotiate, the implications of these legislative efforts will undoubtedly shape the future of American governance and party alignment. In a significant ruling that reverberates across the immigration landscape in the United States, the Supreme Court has granted the Trump administration the authority to lift deportation protections for nearly 350,000 Venezuelan immigrants. This decision allows the administration to proceed with plans to terminate the Temporary Protected Status (TPS) program, a measure that had previously shielded these individuals from deportation due to the political and economic turmoil in Venezuela. The court's order, issued on May 19, 2025, was brief and ensigned a hallmark of the justice's approach to emergency applications. While no vote count was disclosed, Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson notably expressed her dissent regarding the administration's request. This ruling comes amidst ongoing legal challenges to Trump's immigration policies, which have faced scrutiny and opposition in various courts across the country. The TPS program, originally enacted under President George H.W. Bush, was designed to provide refuge for immigrants from countries experiencing significant crises, including natural disasters and armed conflicts. The Biden administration had previously extended protections for Venezuelans, citing the desperate conditions in their home country. However, recent actions taken by the Trump administration, led by Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem, sought to terminate these extensions, claiming that the program's continuation was unwarranted. Ahilan Arulanantham, a lawyer representing the affected immigrants, condemned the court's decision, labeling it truly shocking. He emphasized the potential immediate humanitarian and economic repercussions of this ruling, stating, "This is the largest single action stripping any group of non-citizens of immigration status in modern U.S. history." He warned that the effects would not only disrupt the lives of the immigrants involved but also ripple through the broader economy and impact public health and safety. The genesis of the legal battle dates back to February 2025, when Secretary Noem announced the termination of the TPS extension. This prompted a lawsuit from affected individuals who argued that the decision violated administrative law and was influenced by racial bias. In March, the Federal District Court in San Francisco temporarily blocked the administration's termination efforts. asserting that the plaintiffs were likely to succeed in their claims that Noem's actions were unauthorized by law, arbitrary and capricious, and motivated by unconstitutional animus. Judge Edward M. Chin, who issued the temporary injunction, highlighted the severe repercussions that would ensue from terminating protections for these individuals, including significant economic losses and disruptions to their lives. The Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals later upheld this injunction, rejecting the Trump administration's request to lift it. Yet the Supreme Court's recent order effectively overrides these lower court decisions, granting the administration the flexibility to move forward with deportation plans while the case continues to be litigated. This ruling not only raises questions about the future of TPS for Venezuelans but also sets a precedent for how immigration policies can be shaped by executive action, often in direct conflict with judicial oversight. The implications of this ruling extend beyond the immediate impact on Venezuelan immigrants. It raises critical questions about the limits of executive power and the role of the judiciary in curtailing potentially unlawful actions by the executive branch. The court's decision could embolden other executive initiatives and potentially lead to further erosion of protections for vulnerable immigrant populations. As the legal landscape evolves, the future of TPS and other immigration-related policies remains uncertain. Advocates for immigrant rights are poised to respond, and the broader implications of this ruling will likely fuel ongoing debates around immigration reform in the United States. With the court's decisions expected to continue shaping the contours of immigration law, stakeholders on all sides are bracing for what comes next in this contentious arena.